Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joined us today for the Global Tuna Alliance WCPFC Roundtable. This is the second time the Global Tuna Alliance has held a roundtable meeting in advance of an RFMO meeting. And the aim is to just hold a very short 30-minute meeting where some of our partners can actually talk to delegates on a one-to-one basis, just about their expectations and asks of upcoming RFMO meetings. So this is the second time we've done this type of event, the first time being the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission. So for all the people who are joining us from the WCPFC delegations and other interested parties, welcome, and we hope this is going to be a very useful 30 minutes for you. I'm going to begin with a very brief introduction to the Global Tuna Alliance. First up, my name is Tom Pickerel. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Tuna Alliance. If you're not familiar with the Global Tuna Alliance, we're an independent group of retailers, food service companies, wholesalers, and their suppliers and processors of tuna who share an interest in improving the environmental and social responsibility of tuna fisheries. The GTA was established by the companies themselves. There was no NGO or environmental organization calling for this to happen. The companies realized that they needed to step up to the plate. They needed to start using their commercial leverage to drive change, to get to that level that would be the company is able to sell tuna products that meet their own seafood sustainability requirements. And you can see our vision is pretty broad. It's tuna ultimately meets the highest standards of environmental performance and social responsibility. This is our current membership, and you can see we're mainly focused in the northwest of Europe, but we are steadily increasing outwards, and we have membership now from Africa with Woolworths South Africa, North America with Culinary Collaborations and the Snow Fox Group, and we also have Pacifical, which is the marketing arm of the parties to the Nauru Agreement, of course, as well as some other companies in the Indian Ocean region as well. So we're perpetually expanding, and great to say that we've recently hired Albert Arthur, who joins us today as our Director of Engagement and Outreach to further that work. In terms of the commercial power of the Global Tuna Alliance, we carried out a survey at the end of last year, and we purchased collectively 1.27 million tons of tuna. That was the figure from the end of last year. And that's worth about $1.3 billion US. The interesting fact is this is about 20%, about a fifth of the global production of tuna. So it's quite a significant amount of commercial power with the Global Tuna Alliance. And what we want to be able to do is use this commercial power to drive change in a positive direction. So the WCPO, the Western Central Pacific Ocean, is of great importance to for the tuna marketplace. And I'm sure you don't need me to tell this, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page, that region produces over half of the world's tuna. And most importantly, to companies like GTA Partners who have made public seafood sourcing commitments, it produces 73% of the global catch of MSC certified tuna, which I'm sure you're aware the MSC certification is of great importance to companies wishing to demonstrate their credibility and their credentials in sustainable seafood. And at least a quarter of the labeled skipjack tuna sales are known to come from the Western Central Pacific. So it's a really important region, not just for GTA Partners, but for any company who wants to sell sustainably certified tuna. The WCPO is a really important region to GTA Partners. We asked our partners to identify where they get their tuna from. And you can see from this graph here that there's at least 14 parties to the WCPFC provide tuna to GTA Partners. And a lot of these countries you can't see on this map because obviously they're very small Pacific islands. But you can see it's a great importance to our partners. So the upcoming WCPFC meeting and previous meetings and future meetings are always going to be of significant importance. And our partners have a vested interest in the outcomes of the meetings. So we have a real priority concern in the Western Central Pacific Ocean, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, but there are 27 MSC certified tuna fisheries in that region, which are of huge importance to the marketplace. But in addition, there's 5 further fisheries currently seeking MSC certification through a combination of assessments and fishery improvement projects. And collectively, these represent over 2 million tons of certified and potentially certified tuna from that region. And as you can imagine, for a marketplace that's demanding this, this is of significant importance. But these fisheries are at high risk of suspension from the programme. And this is despite the fact that the tuna fisheries in the region at the moment are unquestionably not overfished, overfishing is not occurring, but these certificates are at risk. What are we doing about it to try to drive change at the WCPFC? Well, we've been instrumental in the coordination of a letter that's been signed by 112 companies from around the world, calling for change, calling for this situation to be addressed. And you can see this is an example that was sent to all the delegations and has been tabled on the WCPFC session website. In addition, we do our own advocacy. We have reached out to all the delegations in the WCPFC calling for action. We have yet to receive a reply from any of the delegations, but we have written to everyone to sort of further highlight the fact that the market is concerned and wants to see action. Finally, we do some press coverage, and this is going to be continuing in the run-up to the WCPFC. And our hook line for this is going to be "Don't lose the label." Now, we know that the MSC certification is just really a symptom of the issue here. The issue is the management of the fishery stocks, but this is what the customers are interested in, and therefore this is what the market is particularly concerned about. The question I often get asked is, surely the Western Central Pacific is too big to fail? This is an example of what happened in the Northeast Atlantic. This is the mackerel fishery, which is a huge fishery. It catches about 1 million tons a year. There were several tuna fisheries, several mackerel fisheries that were MSC certified. And you can see here, the scientific advice was no longer being followed. There was no long-term management plan. And as a result, the certificates were suspended for all Northeast Atlantic mackerel fisheries. And this has had a significant impact on the supply chain. And so, you know, the tuna fisheries, this example, it is not too big to fail. So that's my introduction and overview. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to run through the issue at hand from Bill Holden, who's the Senior Tuna Fisheries Outreach Manager at the MSC, who very kindly offered to join us to just run through the technicalities and the process of this. And then we actually have 5 of our partners from the Global Tuna Alliance to give their perspective on the issue and what they want to see from the WCPFC. And then it's just a final wrap-up slide from me, and we'll thank you very much for your time and for listening to us. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bill Holden from the MSC.
Great. Thank you, Tom, for the introduction. And I'm going to just give you a quick overview of how we got to the position we're at right now. Jump over to the next slide for me, please, Tom. So we had a situation in the Western Central Pacific Ocean where certified fisheries were all being assessed and had conditions for harvest strategies and harvest control rules. They were on different timelines. And when one certificate was coming to an end and they hadn't closed to this condition because it was required to be closed out from WCPFC, they were rolling over into the next certificate period because there were other certified fisheries in the Western Central Pacific that were still had an open condition and were still allowed to be certified. So in November 2018, all of the MSC accredited CABs filed a variation request with the MSC to harmonize the Principle 1 conditions and deadlines for these certified fisheries in the WCPFC convention area. MSC's approval of this variation request aligned the milestones and the schedule for the adoption of harvest strategy elements for these tunas. And with this change, all MSC certified tuna fisheries in this region are required to align their harvest strategy milestones as set out at the document that the CABs use in WCPFC Conservation and Management Measure 2014-06, as it was revised by WCPFC 14 in 2017. The milestones and timelines for the harvest strategies and harvest control conditions, yes, were aligned across all the fisheries for the same stocks using the harvest strategy work plan that was adopted by WCPFC. Fisheries that were currently undergoing full assessment at the time and fisheries that hadn't entered full assessment weren't covered by this variation request, but the MSC has expected that the CABs will follow the same logic and have these new fisheries align their milestones and schedules. And this is what we have seen. As well, the schedules for the annual surveillance audits are also to be aligned. And the next slide will summarize the milestone and the schedules for these stocks and for harvest strategy elements. Tom? The next slide, please, Tom. Yes. So this is the slide that, this was the table that we had in place before the COVID pandemic, and we had some COVID pandemic derogations that the MSC allowed for certified fisheries to have. But as you can see, prior to these derogations at the time, so for South Pacific albacore, skipjack, yellowfin, and big eye, all stocks that are under the management of WCPFC, they should have had their harvest control rules and harvest strategy elements adopted by December this year. That would have been the deadline for them to achieve this. Next slide, please, Tom. However, due to the pandemic, the MSC has issued 2 derogations acknowledging the difficulties faced by certificate holders in making progress on conditions. One of these was issued in March 2020. This was a 6-month extension applied to all fishery certificates. And then as the pandemic wore on, a further 12-month extension to existing deadlines for certain conditions were raised against performance indicators, including the ones for harvest strategy and harvest control rules. So now we see the deadlines. In the previous table, it was 2021, but December 2021. But now with the 6-month plus 12-month extension, the deadline for harvest strategies, the elements of harvest strategies to be in place for these WCPO stocks is June 2023. The next slide, please, Tom. So if an MSC harvest strategy deadline is not met by the June 2023 deadline, the current process envisions, or that we envision MSC, is that the calves would undertake simultaneous expedited audits as soon as possible after that date. Given that the condition had not been met by these fisheries, they would end up being suspended. The MSC expects the calves to do these audits at the same time for all the affected fisheries, to avoid a situation where a fishery that had planned to audit in June was suspended, while a fishery with a planned audit in December still remains certified for another 6 months. So as you see, this is for all the stocks, the yellowfin, big eye, South Pacific albacore, and skipjack. This deadline of June 2023 is real. It's coming soon. The current harvest strategy work plan that's in place at WCPFC could meet this for skipjack and South Pacific albacore. However, we do not expect this to be met for yellowfin and big eye. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Tom, to carry on with the roundtable.
Thanks very much, Bill. Much appreciated. So, pretty straightforward in terms of the process, and very little room for discussion about that. So thanks very much, Bill. And there's Bill's email address if anyone wishes to contact Bill. Thanks very much, Bill. So now we're going to hand over to our partners, and I'm delighted to first up introduce Ruth Hoban from New England Seafood. And Ruth, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, so I'm Ruth Hoban, Head of Sustainability at New England Seafood. Nessie are one of the biggest tuna importers and process supplying tuna into the UK retailers and food service. We place sustainable seafood and supplier collaboration at the core of what we do. So thanks for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today. Tuna from the Western Central Pacific Ocean is a crucial source of seafood for Nessie. Having sourced tuna from this area since 2008, we have built long-term collaboration with suppliers and are working towards sustainable assurances through the MSC. An increased amount of our tuna is coming from the Pacific Ocean, and our suppliers are now MSC certified or well on the pathway towards MSC certification. We were proud to supply UK customers with MSC Pacific Yellowfin tuna steaks this year, which is a first for the UK market following a decade of working with our Pacific Ocean suppliers, of which we are immensely proud. With our supply chain having worked so hard for MSC certification, it's crucial that the upcoming WCPFC meeting delivers much needed progress towards the adoption of harvest control rules for tuna stocks in the WCPO. And this is, the continued MSC certification of all fisheries in this region rests on this. We don't want the possible risk of not having effective harvest strategy and control rules in place, leading to possible MSC suspension, to deter for the incredible efforts of not just Nessie supply chains, but all of those fisheries in the area towards sustainable tuna. With support from Nessie, our customers over the last decade, Nessie and our customers over the last decade, we've supported suppliers to get to MSC certification, and this has been incredible. But frustratingly, through no real fault of their own, they may be at risk of having it suspended. This is why we call on you, the WCPFC delegates, to continue to lead and make progress this year and next in establishing robust management measures for implementing in the December 22 meeting. Decisions are needed, and the WCPFC must work to complete a comprehensive work plan and vote to implement the results in December 2022. Nessie are not alone in our asks, and I know that you're going to hear from other GTA partners on this roundtable. The supply chain is asking for the same thing, and action is needed at these upcoming meetings. Tuna is a fundamental part of our business, and we want to be buying it in many years to come, supplying our customers with sustainably sourced yellowfin and albacore tuna. And the demand for sustainable and well-managed tuna has never been higher. Our sourcing standards are high, with MSC being a key requirement to supply in the UK market. If MSC certification is to be lost as a result of ineffective harvest strategies and harvest control rules, this places future supply at risk. Customers and UK consumers care, and Nessie do not want to review our sourcing from the Pacific Ocean should effective management measures not be implemented come 2022. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Much appreciated. Next up, we have Chris Sherlock from Princes. So, Chris, over to you.
Thanks very much, Tom, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're based in the country around the Western Pacific. It's very good to chat to you. A bit about Princes. We are extremely active in canned tuna, in our brands and customer-owned brands, predominantly around Northern Europe. In terms of our sustainability requirements, we want everything for Princes brands to be responsibly sourced. And what I mean by this is we want it to be sourced from a credible fishery improvement project, a FIP that has the goal of achieving MSC, or from a fishery that's already MSC certified. And I think I want to make it clear, we very much want the Western Pacific to remain open as an option to us for that sort of sourcing. It's massively important to us. While Princes is very much associated with the Indian Ocean, we have two very large processing sites on the island of Mauritius. There's two reasons I'll give that the Western Pacific is important and why we really need MSC certificates retained. The first one is we buy whole round frozen fish for processing at Princes Tuna Mauritius. So to give an example, our very first offering of MSC certified tuna in Princes brand in the UK used P&A MSC certified fish back in 2016 and 17. The other reason is that while we're anchored in Mauritius with our two processing sites, we have a global sourcing strategy. So we buy from other canneries all around the world. So we buy from canneries in Ecuador, Spain, Ghana, but also Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. And I saw a representative from BFAR representing the Philippines is on this call. It's great to have you here. Can I just please emphasize that Philippines is a crucially important country to us in terms of sourcing, working with canneries there, and that MSC is part of that offering, and we can do more business with Philippines. We simply need to basically keep MSC there because it's crucially important in terms of market access into Europe. So we want Western Pacific as an option for these canneries. Without it, it makes life and entry into UK markets, European markets, much more difficult. In terms of next steps, what are we looking to see? Well, crucially at the next WCPFC meeting, we want the points that I think Tom has already outlined around work on target reference points, work on candidate management procedures, improved dialogue between scientists and fishery managers, and that this really needs to have some impetus behind it in December going into 2022, so that we've got a real chance of getting this over the line in 2022. Just, I think, to finish off, I have talked to suppliers, fisheries managers, vessel owners and so on in the Western Pacific, and they come back often with this point that I think Tom made about, well, this is too big to fail. We've got 3 green rated tuna stocks. We're absolutely great. And, you know, I do look quite enviously at the 3 green rated stocks. You're not in a position that, say, the Indian Ocean is, of having to rebuild yellowfin in order to achieve sustainability. There's lots of fish. But firstly, I don't think it's too big to fail. This isn't an issue of politics. The MSC won't actually be involved in removing or stripping the certificate. This will be done as part of the process by conformity assessment bodies. And we've seen the example of mackerel that Tom pitched to us already. So this is very much a real world example that has happened in the past. I simply say having 3 green rated stocks is not enough. Let's get the harvest strategies, harvest control rules in place to ensure that we have 3 green rated stocks going into the future. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris. Next up, we have Isla Jones from the Cooperative. Thanks very much, Isla.
Hi everyone, nice to see you all here. So I'm from the Co-op. We're a UK retailer. We are a cooperative, so we're member owned, and we know that sustainability is really important to our members. At our AGM, we've had 99% of our members voting for us to continue working on these issues of sustainability. And we know, according to the Ethical Consumer latest report, 8 in 10 adult consumers are buying and looking for these labels. So we think that that's something that we should definitely carry on working on. We've had our Healthy Oceans programme in place since 2008. So we've been working on seafood for quite a long time, and MSC is our preferred standard for wild capture fisheries. So we'd really like to see an increase in MSC certified seafood available for us to purchase in the future in order to meet that consumer demand. We'd be incredibly disappointed if these MSC certified fisheries were to lose their certification. And I really think that sends a negative message out to consumers and to our supply base about seafood in general, more broadly. And we've seen that with mackerel recently. So we'd really love to see progress at the next WCPFC meeting in order for that not to happen. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Isla. Next GTA partner is Joe Prosciut from Morrison's. Over to you, Joe.
No worries. Thanks, Tom. Morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak. My name's Joe Prosciut. I'm Sustainable Sourcing Manager at Morrison's. And for the past 5 years, I've looked after the standards for all fish and seafood that we source as a company. To quickly introduce Morrison's, for those of you who might not know, we're the 4th largest supermarket in the UK. We're also actually one of the largest fresh food manufacturers in the UK. And among a wider range of around 20 manufacturing sites, 2 of our own processing sites actually process seafood, which I thought might be of interest. But what I wanted to do was take you a little bit through the background of our approach to seafood sourcing. So we've been members of the Sustainable Seafood Coalition since 2011. That's an industry group which contains most major UK retailers and a range of other companies, including those from the food service industry as well. And underpinning membership to the SSC, the Sustainable Seafood Coalition, is a commitment to sourcing seafood, including tuna, responsibly. And that's a loaded term with loaded meaning, underpinned by the Sustainable Seafood Coalition's sourcing and labelling codes of conduct. And under the framework of that organisation, we prioritise sourcing from fisheries that are either certified to Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative recognised standards, of which the Marine Stewardship Council standard forms the majority of certified fisheries within that bracket, but we also source from fisheries involved in credible, comprehensive fishery improvement programs as well. And these have really underpinned our sourcing from the Western Central Pacific. For as long as I've been in role at Morrison's, we've sourced skipjack from the Western Central Pacific. And in the past few years, we've actually moved into sourcing yellowfin tuna from the ocean as well. And this represents a response really to the huge amount of investment from companies, processors, suppliers, and fishermen responding to the global appetite and our position on needing, wanting, responsibly sourced, responsibly produced fish. But the challenge we're now facing into is the risk of kind of slow regulatory progress undermining all the work and investment of industry. And we really need to see the Western Central Pacific Fishery Commission make significant progress this year and into next year, establishing robust management measures for tuna stocks and implementing these next year. As I understand it, for 4 years in a row, the Western Central Pacific Fishery Commission's Scientific Committee has recommended creating the Scientist Manager Dialogue Working Group. And in 2018, the Commission even developed terms of reference for the group, but it's still not been able to agree on when to hold a meeting. And for me, that's just, a relatively simple example of the type of issue that we need to unlock and want to see progress made on this year. We already know that failing to make progress on management measures risks losing MSC certification. And with this, those that were certified or working towards certification as part of fishery improvement programs, their work is undermined. And if we lose these programs for these fisheries, then we lose the kind of established system by which we selectively and preferentially source from the Western Central Pacific. And this will ultimately leave us in the position as a retailer where we have to review whether that's something that we can continue to do. I kind of didn't want to leave it on too much of a negative note, because I think looking forward to be a little bit more optimistic. We've got delegates meeting in December. And for those of you who are on the call today, I think that's going to be, it's clearly going to be a great opportunity to make progress on the types of ask that we're putting forward. And really, I'm hopeful that, these are reasonable, that we'll see it supported and that we'll see progress made in this meeting. So I just wanted to say thanks for listening and hand it back to Tom for whoever's next.
Thanks very much, Joe. Again, much appreciated. Our last GTA partner to speak today is Andy Bolton from Waitrose. Andy, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Can you hear me? Can you just confirm?
Yes, we can hear you, Andy.
Cool, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm the Agriculture and Fisheries Manager for Waitrose and have previously been the fish buyer for the last 7 years. Waitrose, as a bit of background, is an employee-owned business in the UK and one of the major supermarkets. As a supermarket with 5.5% market share, the importance of fish to us and our customers can be seen through the fact that our chilled fish market share is almost 3 times higher at 15%. Tuna itself is much higher than that. Waitrose set out its sourcing commitments last year. We have ambitious sourcing plans for fish. A key part of the plan is a commitment to source only third-party certified fish, which we are working towards. We believe that it's vitally important to meet that commitment for us and our customers, but more so for the long-term health of the fisheries that we source from. All of our own label canned tuna is MSC pollen line, and we source yellowfin and albacore tuna from the Western Central Pacific. Working with our UK supplier New England Seafood and our key tuna suppliers from the Western Central Pacific, this year we were able to bring chilled pre-packed MSC yellowfin tuna to market for the first time in the UK. We're collaborating with Nessie and our other suppliers to expand this. This is a clear demonstration of the commitment to responsible sourcing that we have. But this is jeopardised if robust management measures are not put in place. To ensure our long-term sourcing of tuna from the Western Central Pacific, this year we want to see bold progress in establishing robust management measures for the implementation next year. That needs to include specifically the adoption of target reference points for yellowfin, candidate management procedures for albacore, and significant progress on the existing work plans. We clearly have a record of working with fisheries and organisations to deliver change for the long-term benefit. We therefore call on you to ensure the work plan is prioritised. A suspension or loss of certification will undoubtedly result in us having to review our future sourcing. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers, Tom.
Thank you very much, Andy. So there you have it. There are 5 completely independent GTA partners who wish to talk today just about the impact of the decision making at the WCPFC and the potential impacts on their businesses. And there are obviously this view is shared not just by other GTA partners, but by other members of the supply chain. And I just redraw your attention to that letter that had 112 companies signing on to it. And there were several more companies that wished to sign it, but missed the deadline as well. So I'd like to end today just with a take-home message. What the GTA and our partners are calling for is for the WCPFC to adopt targets reference points for Big Eye and Yellowfin, adopt a list of candidate management procedures for skipjack and albacore, and establish a scientist manager dialogue group and agree to hold its first meeting in 2022. We understand there's been discussions on the dates, and we just call for the urgency here to just agree a date for 2022 and hold the meeting, and then have the debate about the timings at another time. If you would like to contact us about anything you've heard today, you would like to speak to some of our partners on a one-to-one basis, please feel free to reach out. We'd be very happy to facilitate that, very happy to provide you with further information. And we wish you the very best of luck at the upcoming Commission meeting. Thank you very much indeed for all of our speakers today and for you in attending. We do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.